Hello and welcome to the TID Water and Power Podcast. I'm your host, Constance Anderson, and on this month's episode, we're discussing hydropower. Hydropower is one of the oldest ways to generate electricity and was how TID originally entered the retail electric business more than 100 years ago. And still today, not only at TID, but across the nation, hydropower provides clean and reliable power generation to millions. On this episode, I'm joined by CEO and President of the National Hydro Association, Malcolm Woolf, to discuss NHA's work in advocating for hydropower, the current opportunities and challenges the industry is facing, and what the future has in store for hydropower. Mr. Woolf, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Excellent. So let's start off, if you would, by just giving us a little bit about your background and how you came to find yourself as the president and CEO of the National Hydro Association.
Sure. I'm a lawyer by training and a self-described policy wonk, and my career has really focused on sustainability throughout the last 30 plus years. So I've been in and outside of federal government. I've worked for federal agencies. I've worked as counsel on Senate committees. Also had the opportunity to work as a cabinet-level energy secretary in the state of Maryland. Immediately before coming to NHA, I was working for an all-of-the-above clean tech, cutting-edge business association. And as part of that experience, I worked with all forms of technologies, but never hydropower. And that was part of when I was approached for the NHA position. I frankly didn't know that much about hydropower, but had been working for 25 plus years in the clean energy space and had to wonder, why not? How have I overlooked this resource for so many years? And recognizing if I've overlooked it, I think most other people have as well.
Okay, very cool. So that's kind of an interesting turnabout to go from no hydropower experience to leading the paramount organization for hydropower.
I actually think it's my special skill. The fact that I'm not a hydro guy. I think the hydro industry, to some extent, is too insular. They do amazing things and they talk about them to each other. But part of what I bring is that I'm not originally a hydro guy. So I've got a network beyond the hydro industry. And a perspective of, what's coming around the corner from renewables, from nuclear, from the broader energy and policy sector. And I think that is something that I can bring to the hydro industry that's been really useful.
Sure, I would imagine so. And I would think that even just some of the questions you might ask as a rookie in this field, if you will, maybe get people thinking in ways that they hadn't thought about hydropower before because they're so integrated into the industry.
I think that's right. And I really am struck by the amazing projects, the amazing devices I've been able to see over the last half dozen years. They blow me away by what we as humans are able to build, but people don't know about them. We've done an amazing job building amazing things and an amazing job keeping them largely secret. Or if not secret, then at least, out of sight, out of mind. People have forgotten about them.
Sure. Well, we're excited to have you on today so we can reveal some of those secrets and share some of the good work that's been going on in the hydropower sector. So thanks again for joining us. Now, I also understand that you, in addition to serving as the president and CEO of the National Hydro Association, you've recently taken on an additional title with the Hydropower Foundation. Is that right?
I have, and this has just happened in the last week or two. Incredibly excited to be succeeding Linda Giacchi as the new executive director of the Hydropower Foundation. And we're doing this at the same time we're really rebranding and refocusing the foundation on workforce development. How do we bring new talent, particularly younger workers from universities, colleges, trade schools into the industry? Wind and solar are sexy. Tech is sexy. Again, hydropower is sometimes overlooked. So we know that we've got a silver tsunami of workforce retirements coming upon us in the next decade or so. And I hope maybe later we can talk a little bit about things we could do together on workforce development and making sure that this is an industry that young folks know about is attractive to them. And then when they come, they feel welcome and stay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a key issue that a lot of hydro providers are facing these days. So yes, we will definitely get into that more. So you started with NHA in 2019. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Let's start by talking a little bit about what is NHA?
Sure. We're the business association that promotes all forms of water power. So we want clean, affordable, reliable power. And we want all three. It's not one or the other. We know that this country was really powered by water power over 100 years ago when the first electrification started. It was water power that helped literally drive that. And over the last 100 years, I think to some extent the industry has kept its head down and keeps generating amazing carbon-free, emission-free power, but doesn't tell people about it. So it's amazing to me that we are a great solution that powered our 18th century or 19th century prosperity. And in the 21st century, we've got an awful lot to offer because we're dispatchable, we're flexible. So NHA represents 85% of the generating capacity in the United States. So that includes organizations like Sherlock Irrigation District, to the big investor-owned utilities, Duke, Southern, Pacificor, PG&E, to merchant power generators, independent power producers like Brookfield, and even the government. You've got major hydropower asset owners in the Corps and Bureau of Reclamation and Tennessee Valley Authority. They're all members of NHA. So we represent about 85% of the generating capacity of hydropower and pump storage. And along with those asset owners become the whole supply chain that services them. So whether it's the manufacturers or the engineers or the construction companies, we've got about 350 members in various capacities up and down the supply and product provider line.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a great network of resources. That's super. Now, I want to double back on something you said, that NHA is the business association that promotes water power, not specifically hydropower, but water power. Tell us about the difference between the two.
Sure. I use that word intentionally. In my mind, water power includes kind of all forms of water-related generation. So there's traditional reservoir hydropower, there's run-of-river hydropower, there's pump storage water power. And then there's a whole array of really cool cutting edge marine energy technologies, wave energy, tidal energy, current energy. And they're not at the same scale and level of maturation as other forms of hydropower, but they're really cool forms of technologies. They can serve unique niches, particularly right now for rural communities or coastal communities, a bunch of naval and military applications. And there's a lot of synergies between the hydropower, water power technologies and the marine energy technologies. So I'm proud to have all forms of water power in our portfolio.
Oh, that's very cool. That sounds like a really exciting sector of the energy to learn more about. So that's great.
It really is. And just to jump in a little bit, I've had the opportunity to tour a few facilities with Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. And to me, she's an amazing champion of all forms of water power because amazingly, 80% of Alaskans are not on a power grid.
Wow.
So the capital city of Juneau is the capital city of Alaska, but there are no roads that you can drive to Juneau. When you're in Juneau, they don't have to worry about auto theft because there's nowhere a thief can drive to. And it's the same with the grid. The grid is just in the local area of Juneau. And that's true for 80% of Alaskans.
Wow,
so when
that's
she's
fascinating.
Visiting her constituents, there are hydropower that powers the capital city of Juneau. There's marine energy that powers Igiagig, a local village. She's not making the distinction between which technology is keeping the lights on. She's just seeing all of these technologies helping her constituents. And the alternative is flying in diesel power on seaplanes to try to run diesel generators. So she sees all forms of water power as a solution and doesn't necessarily make the distinction between a 600 megawatt hydropower facility and a 0.5 megawatt water power facility.
Sure. Gosh, what a fascinating case study in all things water power, just in that one area.
Yeah, no, it is. And it reminds us just the versatility of water power.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that's great. I know that for our part, TID pump storage is something that we had looked into it, many moons ago, and had moved away from it for various reasons. But that's one that we're kind of pulling off the shelf again and sort of dusting off those ideas and looking at how that might eventually fit into our portfolio. So very, very fun to find out more about that option as well.
You and a lot of others. So let's definitely come back to that as well.
Very good. We'll do it. All right. So when was NHA formed and kind of how did that come about?
So hydropower as a technology is over 100 years old. NHA, however, is only about 40 years old. So I think there were a lot of original hydropower that was part of public power. And the American Public Power Association, somewhere along the line, formed a hydropower group. And it got more and more active, and about 40 years ago, split off as its own organization. So we're an outgrowth of APPA, still work closely with APPA and Edison Electric Institute, which is their investor-owned utility counterpart. And they just increasingly recognized that hydropower had technical issues that could be better addressed internally and not lost among all the other issues that they had to deal with. And we certainly have our own policy issues. So over the years, it's really grown so that we can both provide insights to our members, advocacy for our members, technical assistance as well.
All right. So you kind of touched on it just a moment ago, but what does NHA advocate for on behalf of its membership?
Yeah, a lot of folks think of NHA first and foremost as an advocacy organization. There's a lot more that we do that we'll touch on, but I am sitting here in Washington, D.C. I can see the Capitol building from our rooftop, and having a voice in Washington is critical, and certainly this administration has shown that. So we were very, very active most recently in the One Big Beautiful Bill, President Trump's massive tax package, and I think the voice of hydropower is a really good case study there. We know that President Trump is not a fan of wind and solar. So the bill that was enacted by the House eliminated all of the tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act, which was targeted against wind and solar, but inadvertently would eliminate the tax credits for other forms of carbon-free technology. The nuclear industry was affected, the geothermal industry, as well as hydropower. The nuclear industry was able to quickly get that changed before it was voted on by the House. And hydropower and geothermal were left with nothing. So we had to work really, really hard in the Senate to get our hydropower champions Republican champions to talk to the White House to explain, we understand your concerns with wind and solar, but you have no concerns against hydropower. President, you've said it's fantastic. It's one of your favorite technologies. And yet you're throwing it out with the bathwater. So we did a whole campaign, including ads with geothermal and others, op-eds, a lot of talking to congressmen to highlight the baseload blind spot that we thought the House had inadvertently done. And we got our tax credits restored, which is going to be worth billions of dollars to the industry. So that was one major win. And there's just even since then, that was only 3 weeks ago, the House has passed another much smaller bill to promote transparency in hydropower permitting. The Senate has passed a bill to allow existing facilities to allow new facilities that need extra time to commence construction to get time to deal with COVID and the supply chain disruptions. So there's always something which NHA needs to get engaged in.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, you talked about the advocacy portion. What else is happening at NHA?
So we, in addition to the DC advocacy, we also want to provide support for our member companies. So, for example, the last couple of days, we had a half dozen or so member companies, send representatives, their chief dam safety engineers here to Washington, had conversations among and between each other, as well as with the head of FERC's dam safety division. And having those conversations is incredibly helpful. At times, it was griping to FERC about some of the problems. Other times, it was almost a therapy support group between each other of, how do you hire, I need someone with 10 years experience, who's got them? It's like, you can't have mine. I'm looking for that too. So that kind of technical insights between either dam safety officials or the folks who do the O&M or senior leaders. We've even launched a new group now focused on water management, an increasing challenge. So those kind of insights, and it could range from everything to how do you manage an upcoming modernization or refurbishment to technical issues like, we saw this hairline fracture on one of our runners and we checked the other runners and, they've got them too. You guys who have similar vintage 60-year-old runners may want to bump up your inspection schedule.
Sure.
Or, we got to replace one. The manufacturer is long since gone. Does anyone have a spare part?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that kind of information sharing and technical assistance we provide a forum for. And then there's a third bucket of activities, our connections. The industry, typically they're working in one service territory, their plants are in one area, and simply the ability to talk to each other, provide a platform to make connections across the industry. Joining the industry 6 years ago, I was surprised that there isn't nearly as much interaction between the federal fleet and the non-federal fleet. Each are about 50% of generation, but the federal guys talk to the federal guys, don't necessarily talk to their private sector counterparts. But, they're all using the same vintage Francis turbines. They're all using the same technology. And there's a lot to be learned. So we do 2 major events over the course of the year, a policy conference in Washington in the spring and a big industry trade show and convention called Clean Currents. It's coming up in October this year for any of your listeners who are interested. Shameless plug. It really is when the industry comes together. This year we're doing in Pittsburgh. You move around the country. And then we do 4 regional meetings around the year, around the country as well. We've got one going on as we speak right now in Alaska. We just had one in the Northeast, and we have one in California coming up in just nope, that one has just happened. So there we go. I have to wait till next year for the for the next California regional meeting.
Fantastic. Okay. Malcolm, I want to double back real quick to when we were talking about preserving the tax credits. Can you tell us a little bit about the tax credits that are available? Who can benefit from those and what types of activities can really capitalize on that opportunity?
Thanks for the question, Constance. We've got a real opportunity here as an industry. When I came on board 6 years ago, the goal was to get parity with other carbon-free sources of energy. Somehow, not only do we have parity, we have an advantage. We have a tax credit and wind and solar don't. So we need to take advantage of this market opportunity. There's 3 areas, or maybe 4 areas where the tax credits are available. Well, let me start with the biggest opportunity here. And I think this is, I'm starting here in part because it's the biggest, and secondly, because I think it affects Turlock most directly. We were able to get between Congress and Treasury clarification that if you modernize an existing hydropower facility, and you're spending significant dollars doing that, 80% of the fair market value of the equipment, that would count as making that facility a new facility. Oh. So if you qualify by replacing generators, turbines, the electric generating equipment, you're likely to meet that 80-20 test because the fair market value of that equipment that's probably 40, 50 years old isn't worth so much anymore. that would make your entire facility, the entire investment, eligible for the tax credit. That tax credit is 30% of the cost. You can add another 10% if you're in a rural location that's designated as an energy community, and most rural locations qualify. And if you use enough domestic content, you can get another 10%.
Wow.
So you can get a 50% off the costs, which I should hope is a game changer. I hope that would change projects, modernizations, maybe facilities that were making money and were economic, but the cost of the upgrade would make it uneconomic. Well, with 50% off, hopefully it's doable. Now, I know that there's a long permitting schedule, and we could talk about that in a moment, and a long construction schedule. In the past, these credits have been on and again, off again. 1 year they exist, 1 year they don't. Awful hard to plan. Here, we've got an 8-year window. If you can commence construction before the end of 2033, you can qualify for the credit. So you don't have to be in operation. You don't have to be fully built. But if you've commenced construction in the next 8 years, then you can get that credit of up to 30 to 50% off. So I hope the industry takes advantage of that for modernization. It also applies if you've got an existing facility and you're increasing the generation. If you're going from 100 megawatts to 150, that extra 50 megawatts you can get the credit for. Okay. If you're adding generation to an existing non-powered dam, that would qualify. If you're building a new pump storage, which you alluded to earlier, that would also qualify. So there's if anyone's out there at TID or others are thinking about expanding or investing in water power technology, we've got an 8-year window where we get a significant federal support for these investments at a time when wind and solar no longer do.
Yeah.
So there's a real, we've got an economic window here.
And it really sounds like if you are any sort of hydropower owner or operator, there's going to be a niche for you to take advantage of at least some of these tax credits.
That's exactly right. Where we find ourselves is having a tax credit for carbon-free resources except wind and solar.
Yeah.
So gas doesn't get these credits. Coal doesn't get these credits. We're competing with nuclear and geothermal. And we all have such different portfolios and such different attributes that, pick the technology that works the best for you. But,
sure.
There's not a single advanced nuclear reactor operating yet in the U.S. I love the idea of fusion, but, hydropower is a proven technology for 100 years.
That's it.
I think we've got a comparative advantage here.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. That's great news. Okay, so now you talked about like the big campaign that NHA ran to really bring hydropower and the importance of getting these tax credits to the forefront. When you're not working on such a heavy-hitting campaign like that, how are you advocating for your NHA members?
Great question. We use a lot of different tools to try to tell our story. And that's what it really is. I think the industry, perhaps based on experiences in the 1970s with the environmental community, it learned to keep its head down, run its amazing facilities, and just keep the power on, and that's it. And as a result, I fear we are out of sight, out of mind. Coming to the hydropower industry from working in a lot of other sectors, you don't see recreational areas around natural gas or coal sites. You don't see nuclear sites being open to the public for fishing. Hydropower really is part of the community. In many places, they build hydropower in a rural area to offset the cost of flood control, water storage, irrigation, whatever it was, created a great recreational opportunity. Homes and communities were built because the hydropower got built. And now, without the hydropower, that community wouldn't exist. So I think we've got a really unique story that many other technologies don't have, but we don't do as good of a job telling that story. So one thing we do is try to get our members to come to Washington, tell their stories here, tell them back in their hometown communities. We also are working increasingly with social media. We're having this conversation in August. August 24th is National Hydropower Day.
Yes,
So,
tell us.
This is a day when we actually take a moment to stop and celebrate hydropower. One of my favorite historical quirks, the Triscuit cookie. Triscuit was named because it was an electric biscuit made by Nabisco 100 years ago when they powered Niagara Falls for the first time. And they were advertising, this is a biscuit using this newfangled electricity. So we're going to call it the electric biscuit, which became Triscuit.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
We need to tell those stories. Actually, if you Google Triscuit and hydropower, you'll see their original marketing, and there's a hydropower facility on the box.
I will absolutely do that. That's fantastic.
So we need to tell our story. We need to remind folks how important we were to keeping the lights on and powering this country a long time ago, and remind them of how important we are now. We've got lots of variable load on the grid. I love wind. I love solar. Solar doesn't work at night. You want to watch Netflix. Hydropower can firm up the variable resource. So National Hydropower Day is a great opportunity to tell that story. Go online.
Yeah.
We're encouraging our members to invite elected officials, community groups to visit. August 24th falls on a Sunday, so encourage folks to celebrate early on Friday beforehand. And we've already got a number of state governors who've declared it their state hydropower day, and just building momentum so people don't take us for granted.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And yes, it's no coincidence that we invited you to join us for the podcast in August, knowing that at the end of the month, TID will also be celebrating, along with NHA, National Hydropower Day. Is there a specific theme for this year?
So the theme this year is hydropower is here.
I love it.
And that is explicitly because a lot of folks have no idea that hydropower is what's keeping the lights on in their community. I've talked with folks who drive over a bridge on their way to work every day, no idea that under that bridge is an operating hydropower facility. So, you can see the wind farms, you can see the smokestacks. Sometimes we're out of sight, out of mind. So the theme this year is hydropower is here, and it's here for communities. It's here for keeping the lights on. It's here for reliable energy, domestic energy, clean energy. It's a great resource that people need to remember.
Absolutely. Well, and as you mentioned before, it's not just the hydropower that comes with these facilities. Oftentimes it's flood control. It's, in the case of TID, it's also irrigation. It's multifold, the benefits that come out of these facilities. So I think that's it's a great day to tell the story. And like you have alluded to, it's the story we need to be telling year round, not just on August 24th. But
I would agree. And I was blown away when I first joined the industry to realize that America has 90,000 dams in this country.
Wow.
And only 2,200 are powered. So what that means is that only 3% of America's dams are powered. And the other 97% are all those other purposes: flood control, irrigation, navigation. Many of those dams, probably tens of thousands of those dams, were used for the mill 100 years ago,
Sure.
that shut down 50 years ago, but the dam is still there. So what that creates a real opportunity to add generation to those existing dams. If you need them for irrigation or flood control, like Turlock, hey, let's use it for generation as well, offset the costs. It also creates an opportunity to modernize dams that may need that. Or in some cases, if the dam's been abandoned and it's not serving a useful purpose, then we need to be open to removing those non-power dams, opening up, wild and scenic rivers. And it's a win-win for everybody.
Sure, absolutely. Wow, very, very cool. I love some of these stats that you're giving us. I would have never guessed on some of these percentages. That's fantastic. Okay, so you already talked a little bit about insights and connections. Let's talk a little bit more about that and how those particular items bring additional value to NHA members. Sure.
I think this is something that's underappreciated even by our own membership. They think of the advocacy, they think of us being based in Washington, but the insights and connections are huge. We've got over a dozen different groups focused on different aspects of the industry, whether that's a pump storage user group or a new development group or our hydropower technical community, separate groups dealing with regulatory issues or legislative issues. And our members can plug in to any and all of those. As an enterprise, we encourage them to leverage that. And so whether you're a dam safety engineer or a senior leader or a water manager, hopefully you can plug into these groups, build relationships with each other, get not only a therapy group to support you as you're trying to make these old pieces of equipment, that can, from my perspective, if you maintain them, they can last forever, but you need to invest and maintain them.
Sure.
And so we provide not only the user groups that typically meet every month virtually. We have in-person events like the senior dam safety engineers that we're meeting in Washington just earlier today. 6 different conferences over the course of the year. The big one being our Clean Currents conference I mentioned earlier in Pittsburgh. And that really is focused on a lot of the insights and operational support. And we also we've launched a new training program, our Hydropower Systems Principles course. And that is for either folks who are new to the industry or even folks who've been in the industry for a while, maybe as an engineer, but they don't understand the power markets side. How does the plant make money? Or the all important regulatory permitting issues, or the dam safety issues, because you're you're not a civil engineer, you're an electrical and you're in the powerhouse. So having a better understanding of those issues, we've got a few hours a month over the course of 8 months. So a full interdisciplinary curriculum, along with a one-day teaser program. So all different ways we're trying to provide insights and value to our members.
That sounds great. Very interesting. Excellent. Okay, so we've kind of touched on little pieces of the industry so far in our conversation, but let's get down to like the real state of hydropower. What is the state of hydropower in the nation, and what role does hydropower play in our nation's power generation?
I often get an opportunity to look at modeling of the future grid, and whether it's resource adequacy modeling to keep the lights on, or climate modeling, or whatever. And the hydro line never moves. They always assume that what we have is what we're going to have. And the point I often make is that I think they assume it's not going to grow. They also assume it's not going to disappear. And I think both of those assumptions are wrong. So right now we've got about 80,000 megawatts of existing hydropower in the country and about 23,000 megawatts of pump storage. So together that's over 100 gigawatts of largely dispatchable, emission-free hydropower and pump storage, which is huge. That powers about 25 million American homes, which is incredible. But as amazing as that is, that ends up being about 6% of generation. So I understand why our elected officials are focused on the technologies that are 30, 40, 50%. Okay. It's a lot easier to focus on natural gas, which is a lot larger, or even nuclear, which is about 20% of the nation's load. But what they often forget is, while we may only be 6% of generation, we're often that first 6%. We're the 6% that can get the grid started when the grid goes down. So one statistic I like to highlight is something, a technical resource called Black Start. Yeah. And Black Start is needed when there is a major electrical outage, like Spain and Portugal just had, or the Northeast had earlier, a decade or so ago. It takes a little bit of energy to start a coal plant, a little bit of energy to start a nuclear plant or a gas plant.
There's a ramping up time.
Yeah. And just even that initial, you can manually lift a gate and let the water run, and the generation will start, and that'll be the spark to allow the electrical generators at the natural gas plant down the way to start.
Sure.
But so we are 6% of generation, but 40% of black start.
Wow.
So I often think we're 6% of generation, we're that first 6%. The percent that starts the grid. And particularly with more wind and solar coming online, they're great, but they don't have spinning stuff. And so that inertia and the ability to, when there is a momentary disruption, the turbines keep spinning because they've got that natural inertia, which helps the grid reliability. So while we're only 6% of generation, I think we have an outsized role in overall generation, in providing a whole array of essential grid services without which the lights wouldn't stay on. And with more wind and solar on the grid, it's only getting to be more important, which actually gets us to the energy storage topic.
Okay.
We've got, particularly in California, a lot of wind and solar, perhaps too much solar during the middle of the day. There's times when prices go negative, where there's more solar on the grid, and they've either got to kind of curtail solar or curtail something else. And the ability to store that power is tremendous. I'm a big fan of batteries. They're a great solution for 2 hours, maybe 4 hours. But that's also a great time to use pump storage. If you've got excess generation on the grid, use those times to pump the water up to the higher reservoir and then release it at night when the sun sets and everyone wants to stream Netflix. So people get very enamored by batteries, and they forget that over 90% of commercial scale energy storage remains pump storage. That is still the bulk resource.
Very cool. No, that's, another little known fact. I appreciate that. All right. So a lot of opportunities that are out there for hydropower. What are some of the current challenges that hydropower is facing?
Sure. The big challenge now that we've gotten the tax clarity involves licensing and relicensing. And they're two separate issues. Let me start with relicensing, because it's that 100 gigawatts of the existing fleet that I'm most focused and most concerned about. It takes about 18 months if you wanted to license a new nuclear reactor. 18 months. In contrast, to relicense an existing 50-year-old hydropower plant takes almost 8 years on average. And there's lots of examples where it's taken, a decade or even 2 decades. I think Hell's Canyon in Idaho, they're in year 20 something of relicensing an existing facility. Makes absolutely no sense. That would be bad if it were 1 or 2 facilities, but there's 459 facilities going through relicensing over the next decade. So that amounts to about almost half of the non-federal fleet.
Wow.
So, or 17,000 megawatts of capacity going through relicensing. These facilities are running safely. They're running economically. Water is a resource that we can share. It can flow through our facilities and go downstream to be used by others for all sorts of other purposes. We don't have to pay for a commodity cost of buying the gas or coal. But when you go through relicensing, it's going to cost millions of dollars. And if you have to make massive investments to improve a spillway or to change fish passage, that can drive a facility to surrender your license. So 70 facilities have surrendered their licenses voluntarily in the last decade. They've been the smaller facilities. They're not the Turlock size. They're right now the megawatt size facilities. But the concern is that it could, much like the nuclear industry has seen over the last decade of massive gigawatt scale facilities closing down, we're concerned about that as well. So we know that this is a priority for the Trump administration, but it was a priority for the Biden administration too. And we haven't seen a whole lot of real action despite the talk. So we think it's really important to streamline the relicensing process so that we retain the existing fleet and don't go backwards on our reliability goals, on our climate goals, et cetera.
Yeah, love to hear you talking about this. Love that NHA is really pushing on this subject, because it's something that Turlock Irrigation District, as you know, is right in the throes of. We started our relicensing process back in 2010, and we're still fighting that battle today. Since I think it was 2016, we've been operating on a year-to-year license. So we technically have an annual license each year, and we're still providing all the benefits that come from the Don Pedro project. But we're doing that without that long-term license. And that's something that we've been working towards, to your point, putting a lot of money behind, putting a lot of time and energy behind. And we're just not quite there yet. So yeah, would love to see that process be something more attainable, more streamlined, and just better for everyone involved.
And I think folks don't appreciate the economic risks that the facilities are facing now. They're not the cash cows that they were, when they were built 50 years ago. And imposing cost after cost after cost could drive folks to say, hey, it's simply not worth it. I'll, put up some wind turbines and call it a day. Of course, those turbines don't have the same reliability as hydropower. So
right.
There's definitely
Absolutely.
A risk. And then there's huge opportunities as well. So while there's risks of hydro going away, there's also opportunities for growth. And you mentioned pump storage earlier, and I did want to double back to that because with more variable load, wind and solar, we need something that can provide clean, firm energy. And we're hearing that loud and clear from the data center owners, the tech companies, Google's, Amazon's, Facebook's. They're all looking for clean, firm generation. And that's what hydropower can provide. And I think the market has suddenly kind of woken up to the potential of pump storage. We've not built a major pump storage facility in this country literally for 20 years. It's been a generation. But we have 82 projects in the FERC queue, culminating in over 99 gigawatts.
Oh my goodness.
Most of those aren't going to get built. Most wind and solar and energy projects put into the FERC queue are, getting site control and trying to explore local issues. And we know only a fraction of those will get built. But it does show the increased interest in pump storage and the recognition that we need clean, firm generation. And I think that's incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. Definitely. Oh, that's great to hear. What else? Other challenges in hydropower? We've certainly got enough, but
the permitting challenge is certainly one of the big ones. Another challenge that we're facing is one of public perception. We know that climate change means water change. And particularly out west, it means we're getting less snow and more rain. And so I often get questions about drought. Is hydropower going away because of climate change? And actually, the modeling I've seen out of the Department of Energy shows actually the opposite, that for the next 50 years, we're likely to see more hydropower generation because of the shifting water patterns. And folks look at the tragic pictures from the Colorado River and think, oh, hydropower is drying up. And what's happening in the Colorado is a tragedy. But it's not actually representative of what's happening around the country.
And for our listeners who might not be familiar, give us just a high level, what's happening down
there?
Sure.
So the Colorado River provides power for and water for a huge swath of the Southwest, and it is getting decreased water flows year after year after year. And what they've discovered is that the water allocation from the early 1900s was based on the high 3 years that they've never seen again. So the water allocation was kind of flawed to begin with, and the water levels are dropping. And so it is beginning to impact hydropower generation. It is beginning to impact water supply for the city of Phoenix and for other southwestern cities. And you can see some pictures of Glen Canyon Dam and others with a water ring because the water level is just feet below where it used to be. And those pictures create the misperception that hydro's drying up around the country. When the water patterns are shifting, and it's shifting away from the Colorado River, unfortunately, but it is shifting to atmospheric rivers in California and more rain in the Pacific Northwest. And we've got an amazing thing like a transmission grid that can wheel that power down to Phoenix and other places. So I just encourage your listeners not to confuse the pictures of seasonal drought over the long term. Even in the mega drought that the West has been having, the studies have shown that hydropower is performing above 80% capacity.
Great. Very good. And I'm glad you mentioned the changing climate issues that we're seeing and the ways that is manifesting in different parts of the United States. Is there one particular area of the country, not necessarily related to climate change, but just in general, that seems to be particularly in a challenging spot? And how does geography play into that, or does it?
Yeah, so the Colorado River is certainly one area. Another area is New England. New England built a lot of smaller facilities, a lot of the older facilities, and those make them the more, they're still economic to keep running. But when they go through relicensing, they're going to be forced to invest very differently than originally. We're seeing a lot of retirements in that region, which is a challenge because that region also has a constrained natural gas supply pipeline. So if they don't want hydropower and they can't get gas, they may have trouble keeping the lights on.
Yeah. Oof, that's a scary situation. Okay. So now let's look ahead a little bit. Can you tell us about some of the exciting hydropower projects or initiatives that are happening in different areas and kind of what are some of the good things going on out there? Yeah,
I really am excited about the momentum we're getting from the One Big Beautiful Bill. I think folks woke up to, who've kind of been sleeping on hydropower for a while, are suddenly realizing, wind and solar can't keep the lights on 24/7 by themselves. We need clean, firm power. And now it's a tax-preferred technology. So I think I'm getting more calls from Wall Street types, more calls from folks who are interested in either modernizing an existing facility or exploring adding generation to a dam that exists but doesn't have generation, or even some of those pump storage facilities that I mentioned earlier. I think they're getting more calls for financing. So I'm hoping that that the future of hydropower looks really, really promising in that 100 gigawatts of generation. Not only can we maintain that 100 gigawatts, which I think right now is a question, but that it can grow. And this is, if I could come back to Washington for a moment,
sure.
The next 4 years are going to be pretty important for those 400 plus facilities going through relicensing this decade. They're going to have to make a decision. Are they going to go through it or not? And I think the One Big Beautiful Bill gives us an incentive. I think it was necessary, but it's not going to be sufficient. If you're still looking at on average 8 years, or for you guys, you started in your license expired in 2016.
That's right.
So it's crazy. If you didn't know the costs of relicensing when you start relicensing, then how do you plan? How do you make these capital expenditures? How do you keep the costs low for your ratepayers? It's a crazy situation. So I think it's gotten, I think there's a growing bipartisan consensus that what we're doing makes absolutely no sense. Whether that will be enough to get Congress into action is unclear.
Yeah. We will wait with bated breath to see how it all plays out for sure. So again, looking towards the future of hydropower then, it sounds like, as you mentioned, these next 4 years are kind of going to be a really decisive point for a lot of facilities across the nation. What else do you anticipate out of the future of hydropower?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement about refurbishing the existing fleet, building some of that new pump storage. Marine energy technologies are coming to a new stage in development. They used to be R&D science projects. They've now gone beyond that. They've done the demonstrations. They're doing commercial scale deployments in Europe. Some facilities have even been there for a decade or longer. So I see more and more deployments of marine energy technologies in remote coastal communities, military installations. There's a big ocean out there. You can use these marine energy technologies almost like EV charging stations in the middle of the ocean and have kind of remote naval sensoring equipment drive up to a charging station, recharge, and keep going. So I think there's a bunch of really cool applications for hydropower and marine energy in the future.
Nice. Well, that's an excellent positive outlook for the future. I appreciate that. That's great. So now, more specifically, what does the future of the National Hydro Association look like?
We're in a really good situation here. We've gotten an administration that supports us. We've gotten the favorable tax credits. I think folks are interested in reinvesting in the fleet. Success breeds success. I think we're going to see our manufacturing orders go up, more investment in the existing fleet and the new fleet. All of that brings in, hopefully, with a closer alliance with the Hydro Foundation, we can raise the visibility among college students and trade school students to bring them in to do all this work that we're going to be doing at these facilities. And that is literally showing up at NHA. We launched our own trade show and conference about 5 years ago. It's been growing every year. Last year was our largest ever, with over 2,000 folks. And that was in Portland. This year we're going to be in Pittsburgh. So excited that folks are showing up and really seeing NHA and Clean Currents as the place where the industry gets together. The number of side events, the number of other things happening. If you want to do bike tours or golf tournaments or boating among the burbs of Pittsburgh, there's all sorts of fun activities. So encourage folks to come. And as a result, NHA is a very busy place. We've doubled in size over the last 5 years, which sounds impressive till you realize that we're still less than 20 people. So we're a small but nimble team. And I think with the new wind at our backs, I think we're going to be able to help deal with the fact that we've got an aging workforce. And we've got a relatively new program called FLOW, Future Leaders of Water Power, really trying to make sure that kind of folks new to the industry, the under 35 crowd are welcome. There's happy hours, there's networking, there's mentoring, and all of that gives us a bright future.
That's awesome. Great stuff going on over there. I really appreciate you sharing all this with us, especially for somebody who has only recently, in the last 6-7 years or so, come into the hydropower world. You came in today and dropped some serious knowledge for us. So I appreciate you being with us.
My pleasure. A lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the TID Water and Power Podcast. You can find TID on Facebook at facebook.com/TurlockID, on Instagram and Twitter at TurlockID, and on LinkedIn as the Turlock Irrigation District. I'm your host, Constance Anderson. We'll see you again next time.